What would you think that says about how the Tinubu administration regards Nigerian youth?
There is complete disregard to every aspect of the nation. It's not just the youth. And then again, if even they go ahead with implementing the youth conference, it will only end up being another APC youth rally, because the government has its way of, politicizing whatever they do. And then the devil will be in the detail in terms of implementation of whatever are the recommendations that may even come out from Nigerian youths. So it is one thing to propose a conference and another thing to have the sincerity or political will to follow through with whatever will be the genuine fallouts of that, meeting. So that is where we are as a people.
Peter, would you like to take part in this national youth conference?
I basically believe that it will be a charade. Look, let us be honest and sincere with ourselves and be very straight. Nigeria does not need another youth conference. Everybody that is in Nigeria today, whether those in power and out of power, know the problems that we are facing. The president has certain reports that are at his disposal. There is a 2014 National Conference report that was put together by the Jonathan administration. During the Labour Congress protest last year for minimum wage increase, the president came out with the implementation of a Stephen Oronsaye report that has become the rush hour report for every Nigerian government that finds itself in a difficult position. What happened with the implementation of Oronsaye report? There is a Justice Uwe's panel on electoral reform that the federal government also has access to. What is happening with all these reforms? So what gives us the guarantee that the youth conference will become the silver bullet? Nigerian politicians are not sincere in purpose with what they are doing. And the Nigerian youth must rise above that occasion and become very strategic, because guess what? Nigerian leaders may not know how to deliver the governance, but it doesn't mean they do not know corruption. The system you seek to change has been in place for more than 60 years. Nigeria is almost an open crime scene. So you must be strategic. Gathering people for a political charade and funfair would not solve the issues. We must decide what we believe that are the solutions and then implement it, and not the other way around. Your oppressors calling you to come and sit down to discuss. I would not be part of that. I would want to say that a good number of Nigerians are aware of the issues that bedeviled every Nigerian. The question is, what is the solution and how do we approach this solution? We have over time decided to take on this knee-jerk reaction to protest and mass protest. Whenever something comes up, hit the streets and make a demand. But over time we have seen that it has been proven not to be very effective, because the government will come out and tell you, okay, is it end bad governance? Don't worry, we'll release the cost of rice, we'll release bags of rice to you and all of that, and then everybody goes in. And there is also a bad side, because there is protest fatigue. When you call out people for a protest and then it does not meet the target, the danger in it is that you fall short of getting that kind of mass support in a second call. That was what happened with NSAS. Now, what the call for Nigerians will be, every sector in Nigeria is in trouble. The only systems that are doing well is corruption and criminality. There have been in fact, within the last 1 week, more than 150 persons have been killed in Plateau alone. And the president is still out of the country since the 2nd of April. This is the same president who criticized Jonathan and say, when it comes to security, the buck stops at the president's desk. Today, the president is missing in action when citizens are being slaughtered in the most gruesome manner. Why? Because he knows that, of course, it has no implication to his 2027 agenda. Travel through Abuja and Lagos, you will see placards of President Tinubu talking about 2027. So Nigerians will now have to decide what are our problems and what is the first step to, beginning our findings or solutions. Because you can't solve all. We take on one that gives you the foundation to begin to change others. That is where the Nigerian youth conversation must be centered on at this point. The pressure that needs to be applied at this point will be maximum civil pressure on the National Assembly to amend the Electoral Act, and Nigerians guarantee that there should be free, fair and credible elections in 2027. Other than that, if you look at the permutations that are going on, a few days ago the Minister for FCT held a media conference where he boastfully said that Peter Obi cannot win. In Nigeria, it is not about the best. If you look at the trend, the arrogance of the ruling party is in the fact that they know that there is disenfranchisement of the people. The democratization of disenfranchisement. Without your votes or not, we are going to come back. That is why when you have failed in the first 2 years, you are talking about the second term. So now Nigerians will go, but when you talk about electoral reforms, a lot of Nigerians are scared. And what we fail to understand is this: INEC And the National Assembly already presented a caveat, but it was very sinister. The Electoral Act provided for electronic transmission of results, but it made it optional for INEC. The simple protest Nigerian youths must do today, following this 30-day challenge, is going back to the National Assembly. That section 65 that says the presiding officer at the polling unit can transmit results in a manner chosen by INEC must be taken out and replaced with mandatory. And then any other clause that you know, if you want to get independent candidacy, because what they have done is to hijack political party registration. You cannot register a new political party. Look, Nigerian youths know what to do. They know the problems, and they are not attached to one person. You saw what they did with the obedient movement. They proved that we can be our own people, but the system failed the Nigerian youths. You know, in fairness to the Nigerian youth, we have found ourselves in a dilemma where we need to undo the mess of past and previous generations, and also the ones that we have also created. Because you ask yourself exactly, the generations ahead, what exactly was left on ground for the Nigerian youth? And now we are stuck in a situation where we need to now begin to unravel this thing. Unfortunately for Nigeria, there is no worst case scenario, because the fact that things are this bad do not mean it will not become worse for us as a people. That is why the Nigerian youth today has been scrambling for whatever solution they can hang on. We came up with NSAS, they fired live arms at us. We came up with NBAD governors, they decided to arrest us. As we are talking, there are some NSAS protesters who are still in prison. As we are talking, more than 5 years, going to 5 years after that protest. In fact, the Lagos state government has not even agreed to how many persons' bodies were found in the morgue who turned off the lights. It is still a challenge. So when you see the burden that is on the Nigerian youth, but my plea and my call, what I have been seeking, and becoming almost a broken record, is that we must be strategic. If you go on social media, you hear certain persons begin to tell you about revolution now, my uncle Showore, who I so much respect. The question you will ask yourself is, if there is a revolution today, and for example, the president leaves, who takes over? That is the Vice President Shetima. The third in succession is Akpabio, or you want to go through the military route. And even when there is a total removal of, you must still have an electoral process where somebody who has the legitimacy to rule or lead will be brought in. So if you look at our entire dilemma, it boils back to an electoral process. That is why what I'm doing now is citizen sensitization. I will personally take a letter to the National Assembly in due course. I will begin my own one-man protest, because that is the only way we can begin to unravel this. When everybody in Nigeria begins to sing about INEC and elections, they will get the point. President Tinubu knows. Godswill Akpabio, the Senate President, knows. Look, forget about anything economy. Don't talk about, if President Tinubu does not want to fix inflation, let him not fix. If he doesn't want to fix insecurity, let him not fix. Get a means to hold him accountable in 2027 and see. Let a politician know that this system can bring me in and this system can take me out. Then go there and do it. The truth of the matter is, when you see certain of these divisions, although they exist, but they are also the handwork of evil and corrupt politicians. They know how to throw stones of division. Look, there is nothing that unites a people than their collective pain and suffering. Every Nigerian today knows that the price of a liter of petrol is higher. The cost of a bag of rice is higher. They know that power has been epileptic in certain or most areas of the country. Even those who are on certain bands A to Z are paying through their nose strills. So now what it means is that if you bring the agenda of electoral reform, everybody in Nigeria has been a victim. There are certain persons in Borno State today who have a senator that they did not vote for, who did not contest through the primaries. He's there through the judiciary. If you look at what happened in Kano, remember that when the governorship election went to the tribunal, it was upheld at the High Court. It was turned down by the appeal court. When they saw the reaction from the Kano State citizens at the Supreme Court, they decided to realign. In fact, there were allegations that there were 2 judgments that were kept to be released on the day of that ruling. Every Nigerian knows that elections, when you talk about underage voting and all the beginning of, what do they call it, inconclusive election, it began with Kano State, with President Buhari in 2019. Nigerian youth just need a level of sensitization and mobilization. That is what everybody will be talking about, including CSOs, because at some point it seems like we are more interested in protesting about the problems than solving them. Because maybe solving them puts certain persons out of business. So if we really want to take the root causes of the matter chapter, it should be an aggressive citizen sensitization. Every Nigerian is a victim of bad governance, including those who are wealthy. Sure. Only the thieves or criminals in Nigeria today will not complain.
You've been talking about an agenda, a single focus.
Yes.
What if you have to itemize it in 3 spaces?
Yes.
What would 1, 2, 3 be?
Nigerian youths, our focus number 1 is INEC, number 2 INEC, number 3 INEC. By the time you are done with INEC, you can talk about constitutional reform, judicial reform, law enforcement reform, but it must begin by sending people into power who have the competence and character to reform. It will begin by realizing the dilemma we are today. What the current administration is providing for Nigeria is the textbook definition of how not to govern a country. Nigeria almost exists so that other countries can learn how not to govern their countries.
Wow.
It is a criminality and corruption Armageddon. And if you do nothing by 2027, it will only get worse.
But see, Peter, when you say all of this, when you look at the numbers, in totality, National Assembly members, State House of Assembly members, governors, presidents, ministers, they are what? Maybe 1, maybe 2% of the totality of the Nigerian population. Meanwhile, they seem to hold everybody's lives and everybody's possibilities in their hands. Are we not responsible for allowing the situation to get to where it is?
We are. Our people go say that the way you see that night cameraman will snap you. The truth of the matter is that Nigerians are in a hostage situation, and we have failed to realize. In fact, a lot of Nigerians are rather cooperating with the persons who took you hostage. That is the Stockholm syndrome. That is why today we can see the arrogance that is going on, and what we are observing is a dangerous state capture, where the National Assembly, who should be performing oversight, have literally become an APC town hall. It is an extension of the executive. The judiciary is gone. Now Nigerians must find the courage and the wisdom to 1, be strategic, and 2, be firm. Nation building is not a sprint, it is a marathon. Everything will not turn around in a moment. Take 1 strategic step at a time, secure that foundation, then we can build on it.
So let's go back. I'm so sorry. Let's go back to the National Assembly. The National Assembly in totality is not made up of APC. There's PDP, there's LP, there's some I think NNPP as well. And one of the things I was really expecting from these other parties was to see bills, was to see action and conversations and conversations that reflect what was really happening. You have the party in power, then you have those who are in opposition. And I'm sorry to say, for many of them, opposition parties have disappointed the National Assembly because they seem to align with everything that the party in power is doing. But so we have opposition. We have people voted for thinking, okay, you're not laying down and facing the same direction. What happens to them?
Ms. Lu, let us be honest with ourselves. Nigeria should not pretend that we don't know what we are experiencing. What is going on at the federal level has a template that has been fully implemented in Lagos State. President is not a normal politician. A senator stood up and told you on national TV that the National Assembly is not opposition friendly and it's not women friendly. There was a recent video where a former Senate minority leader, Senator Inayaha Kotabaribe from Abia State, had to walk out of the National Assembly when the presiding officer refused another opposition lawmaker an opportunity to raise a bill. What do you think happened with Senator Natasha? When you talk about state capture, it is the executive wielding its entire power to ensure that anybody who tries to be a voice of dissent is put this way. That is what is going on in the National Assembly. And if you know the enormous, and this is not trying to hold place for the opposition lawmakers, because they are a huge disappointment. If you cannot stand up and speak up for a time like this, then what do you expect from defenseless persons like us? People who are on the street with your security, with your money, you decide to be on the same bed with the persons who are oppressing Nigerians. That is why Nigerians must decide that we are tired of the entire system. In the words of the Reverend Tunde Bakari, you saw his State of the Union address. He said, what we are seeing is political banditry. It is motopark politics. Literally, that is what is going on. For Reverend Tunde Bakari to come up with such a scathing rebuke of the Tinubu presidency, Nigerian youth must decide to come together and say, enough. Religious and traditional institutions are just appendages of the political class. When you talk about the Nigerian elite, it includes religious leaders. The most hypocritical set of persons. You do not hear them talk about election and where to vote. After election, they crawl out of their holes and begin to tell you to pray for the government. They are a part of why the Nigerian citizenry have been held down, and that is why with all our number of religious institutions, we do not have any meaningful impact. Everybody prays in a mosque, everybody prays in a church. Who is stealing money in government? I do not fear for Nigerian youths. I believe that we have the requisite courage and capacity. We need leadership that is strong, strategic, and firm. My hope is that Nigerian youths have proven before that they can build something out of nothing. What we need to do right now is to begin a challenge. Tell President Tinubu to come out and state clearly that if you are a Democrat, Your Excellency, commit to free and fair elections in 2027. If he fails to commit to, we must ensure that we mount maximum civil pressure as peaceful Nigerian youths and get what we need from this system, or else we have more years of lamentation.